Welcome to EPL Insights for Game Week 23 of the Premier League season. Gareth Wheeler, Jake Osgathorpe with you, a podcast put on by Pinnacle with the data provided by InfoGoal. Our streak of profitable weeks continues, and we dip into a match week with plenty of compelling games, and at least from my perspective, lots of plays to make. And that's kind of the nature of things, at least here in North America, Jake. It's Super Bowl week. I got my Philadelphia Eagles sweatshirt
Fly,
on
Eagles,
here.
fly.
Go Birds, fly Eagles, fly. It was compelling to see that the book opened on Pinnacle at Eagles +1, immediately shifted to -2.5. I jumped on Eagles -1 right away, and that's exactly where the market has settled. Do you have Super Bowl fever over there in the UK?
Not just yet. No, it's not caught on me just yet. I think I'm a massive NFL fan myself, but I don't know. I think the issue we have is that there's such a long break between the last round of the playoffs to the Super Bowl. Like, it's the championship rounds 2 weeks after before. I think that's quite a long layoff. Like, you can understand why from a sports perspective and a viewer perspective. You get players back fit, you can work on game plans, etc., to make it the best spectacle. But you just want it there and then. It's fresh in everyone's minds after championship weekend, and then you have to wait 2 weeks.
Yeah.
It's like, what?
It's the buildup. It allows the books to settle. From an Eagles perspective, I'm with you. I wish the game was played right away. Mahomes' bad ankle, Kelsey potential back issue. Betting against Patrick Mahomes, I should know better, but I backed him in the Super Bowl when they took on Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I got burned. Hopefully he doesn't go the other way and burn me this time around as well. Look, plenty of NFL content as well on our NFL Insights podcast. That's upcoming in the build up to the Super Bowl. So keep it locked at Pinnacle across the social channels. As for last week, narrow victory or narrow profit on my part, Jake. 5 wins, 4 incorrect, but the plus numbers all came through. Under the number Everton, Arsenal. Go Dyche in football as coined by you, Jake Osgathorpe, at +106. Brighton win to 0 over Bournemouth, +121. What a great number there. And we both backed Wolves on the handicap, +half a goal at +102. And both of our best bets came through, with Brentford doing the job again against Southampton for my backing as well. So it turned out to be a decent week, although the record wasn't great. The plus numbers and the best bets ensure that it was another profitable week here in 2023.
Exactly, yeah, and landing both best bets is key. Really, they're our biggest fancies, but I think probably would both say that our second biggest fancy was Wolves with a handicap. I mean, that number just looked like an absolute gift at the time, and it proved to be the case, didn't it? Just how bad Liverpool have been, and Wolves obviously on a little bit of an upward trajectory.
Yeah, no kidding as well. Were you surprised how poor Liverpool were? It was really a week of upsets. I'm not sure if that was the result that stood out for you. Spurs went on to beat Man City. Everton, of course, beat Arsenal 1-0. Arsenal weren't very good in that game as Sean Dyche announced his return back to Premier League football. What did you make of the match week? Because at the top of the table, really all the top sides were dropping points.
Yeah, they did, and it nearly was all of the top 4, wasn't it? Because Man United reduced to 10 men, hanging on to a lead against Crystal Palace, so it could have been a full house of the top 4. But yeah, I think the defeats for Arsenal and City were kind of a little bit concerning for both in different ways. I thought Arsenal, that was as tame as we've seen them look all season long. It was actually their worst attacking display based on expected goals of the season so far. So whatever Dyche did, there's plenty of videos going around on social media as to how he set his team up tactically. What he did there was really, really effective, and maybe it'd be interesting to see if that's used as a blueprint by Arsenal opposition moving forward to try and limit their threat. Also, interestingly, they were exposed by set pieces from Everton quite a bit. Everton's biggest chances came from the dead ball situations, so maybe one to keep an eye on there. Generally, they've been good from set pieces, Arsenal, this season. So it may just prove a one-off. And then as for City, they just look really flat. Like, I don't know what Pep's up to with his Pep roulette. It's getting a bit bizarre now. You've got Gundogan, De Bruyne, Foden out the team, coming off the bench. Erling Haaland's dropping into the number 8 position to pick the ball up because he's that, out of the game. Yeah, something's not right there. And obviously they've had all the off-field distractions as well with the 100+ breaches of financial improprieties, all sorts of stuff that's been happening over here that's all over the news, and people calling for points deductions, relegations, strip titles, all sorts. So be interesting to see how that affects them. But just on the pitch, they were really poor, and against a Tottenham team that had been shipping chances left and right, they didn't put up much at all in terms of creating.
Before we crack on with the games this week, it was funny because the Arsenal game was early on Saturday. They dropped points, and in our WhatsApp between us, we're like, "Oh, the Arsenal." Well, at least I was the Arsenal fade, and we were mentioning last week. We were saying probably last week was the time to get on Man City if you wanted to back them to win the Premier League. They're now plus 135 to win the Premier League, or Man City. Arsenal at minus 140. Is this now the time? Like, there were famous last words, right? Because then they went on to lose to Spurs. So what do you make of the futures for the champion, and whether there's enough concern or enough red flags when it comes to Man City that would keep you off that number?
Yeah, well, it's a big week, isn't it, in terms of the title? Because not only have they got both potential home banana skins, you'd have to say, this weekend, Brentford and Villa, but they also play each other next week, midweek on Wednesday. So, that first meeting is actually at the Emirates, which you'd have to say, it will favour Arsenal. If that was at the Etihad, you'd probably fancy City's chances of winning more. But yeah, I don't know. It's a strange one. If Man City were performing at a consistent level where they were reliable, and they were you knew what you were going to expect, even if it was, win 3, lose 1 out of 4, etc. You kind of know what you're going to get. And generally we have for the last 4 years, we've known the kind of levels that they're hitting. But recently, the way in which they played, particularly at Man United and then at Spurs, 2 kind of big 6 opponents away from home, they've been really poor. Like the attacking figures, I think it was less than 0.7 XG against Old Trafford, and just over 1 against Spurs. So they've really struggled to create chances against what you would call the better teams in the league. That has to be, major. I mean, it's put major doubts in my mind anyway, given the fact they've got to go to the Emirates on Wednesday, and if Arsenal do win that game, the gap stretches to 8 with a game in hand. So I thought last weekend was the time. When you messaged me, I was fully on board. I
That was the time.
Spurs. I'd back Spurs. I'd back City to beat Spurs as one of the bets. I obviously wasn't expecting Arsenal to lose, but I thought they might drop points. But yeah, I don't know if I trust City enough to even say now's the time. I really don't. I think the prices are probably fair. I don't think there's much juice in either in terms of value. So I'd be just happy to kind of give it a watching brief for now, because I thought last week was the one where Man City would really kick on, make a statement at Spurs. And yeah, they look really flat and were really underwhelming.
I'll just say this: the financial fair play breaches, the cheating over a decade by Man City. Let's be honest here.
Is that coming from a Manchester United fan?
That's coming from a football fan. They punish everyone in the footballing pyramid. It's not just United, but those breaches, this will unlikely be settled this season. So any points deduction is highly unlikely. I don't think that this number reflects that. I think it reflects the current standard and what's playing out right now in the Premier League. But I will say this, I kind of do like that number for Man City ahead of the Arsenal game midweek. We'll get into that on next week's podcast. We're going to do an early one ahead of that game. But Spurs have been a bogey team for Man City. They beat City 5 of the last 7 times that they played. So let's just call that a continuation of a crazy trend. And I'm thinking that Man City will get back on track in quick order. We'll see how it plays out. Difficult game this week, although they are playing at home against Aston Villa. That game will feature in our rapid fire section. It didn't make our featured 5 or our 5 biggest games or the 5 feature games. We'll go through those first, then we'll go through the rapid fire, and we'll go through some futures bets that are available on pinnacle.com as well. Are you ready to go? Let's dig into this weekend, and let's start off. West Ham sitting 17th place in the table, facing 9th place Chelsea. West Ham are on 19 points, coming off a 1-1 draw at Newcastle. And that's coming off a much-needed win before that over Everton. Paquetá to finally scored an important goal for this team. They really need him to play to get David Moyes' side to propel them up the table. They did lose the XG battle 1.51 to 1.33 in that game. The good news for West Ham, they've conceded just 2 goals in their last 5 in all competitions and haven't lost in 3 now in the Premier League. They are 4-5-1 at home. They have the 8th best home expected goal differential according to Infogol, and the 5th best expected goals against at home. They've played to the under 2.5 goals in each and every one of their 5 last games in all competitions. Zuma and Kerr are both going to be out this weekend. Skamaka getting close. He may be available in some capacity for David Moyes this week. Chelsea, snooze fest city, I should call them, back-to-back goalless draws. Fulham and Liverpool. Against Fulham, a 1.30 XG to just 0.52. Defensively, they've been solid, but from an attacking perspective, they just look lost. It was a debut for Enzo Fernandez in that game and a full debut for Mudryk, who was actually sick and was taken off at the half. They haven't conceded a goal in their last 3 either. 2-3 and 2 in their last 6 Premier League games. Just 5 goals scored in their last 10 Premier League games overall. Their away form has been shaky, 3-3 and 5 on the season, but they do have the 6th best expected goals against away. They've played the under 2.5 in 8 of their last 10 games. Wesley Fofana looks to be available. I'm not sure if Graham Potter will really matter because his back 4 looks pretty settled right now. It looks pretty decent. Kovacic is a question this weekend. And João Felix, this is the final game he'll be suspended. Chelsea won head-to-head in this game in September at Stamford Bridge. It was a 2-1 final. The XG relatively level, 1.31 to just 1.23 in that game. West Ham, no clean sheets against Chelsea in 6, and Chelsea have been first to score against West Ham in 5 of their last 6. What do you make in this one? It's kind of hard to gauge Chelsea because overall the players are impressive. Potter's trying to put together this new looking team on the fly, but their inability to put the ball into the back of the net has to make you hesitate before you make any play that's backing the Blues.
Absolutely, yeah. That's why I'm not going to be taking one of those plays. Yeah, you've said there they struggle to put the ball in the net. West Ham, same issues. So I'm looking down the angle of opposing goals. A couple of ways you can do this. The under 2.5. The line's set at under 2.25. But I was looking at under 2.5 at minus 142. I looked at that. I think it's a bet, but I'm not going to pull the trigger on that because I've got a different play that's a better price.
I wonder if we have the exact same one.
We
might have gone down the same rabbit hole here.
I'm going to take both teams to score no in this game, which is at minus 110 currently on Pinnacle. And the reason for that is if you think it's going to be a low-scoring game, the chances are one of the teams aren't going to score, basically. One team's going to keep a clean sheet. I wouldn't be surprised if both kept a clean sheet and this finished 0-0 because Chelsea have got a bit of a habit of that at the moment. But yeah, West Ham, over the course of the season, they've actually ranked as the 5th best defensive team in the league based on expected goals per game. It's a good starting point for this bet. And then Chelsea come into this since the restart have allowed just 0.94 expected goals against per game, which is the 3rd best over that period. So that 0.9 figure actually includes matches against City and Liverpool, who are the 2 best attacking teams in the league based on expected goals. So they're trending in a really positive direction. As you said, he's got a very settled back line now. But yeah, neither team are creating chances whatsoever. West Ham, I think of the last 7 matches, they've racked up just 1.3 expected goals for per game. Chelsea, as you said, they've scored just 5 times in the last 7 since the restart. So yeah, the both teams score no appeal. And then I looked at the kind of click rate, how often it's landed this season. It's hitting 62% of West Ham's matches and 57% of Chelsea's. So you combine that for a 59% strike rate. And yeah, ultimately that gives you a value price. It should be closer to the minus 140 you're getting for the unders, but we're actually getting it at minus 110. So yeah, both teams to score no. The only way this loses is obviously if both teams hit the net. And I think that's very unlikely given the defensive strengths and the attacking inconsistencies.
What do you make of why this Chelsea team is playing this way under Graham Potter? a manager with Brighton, his previous club, you know, they were XG darlings to a certain degree, weren't they?
They were, yeah. They're getting back to that. They're getting back to that. They had a wobble. Was it 6 games before the break? They had a really bad patch where they lost matches and lost the XG battle. But since the restart, there's only Manchester City that's actually won the XG battle against Chelsea. So they've won the XG battle in 6 of 7, which is, you know, it's a pretty decent place to start. You'd have to say, been unfortunate in some of those matches. Some of the games have been close in terms of the expected goals, like the Forest game, they edged it. But there are the signs there that things are coming together. And I think that, you know, people probably forget, looking at this current Brighton team, that is just absolutely nuts. They're scoring goals for fun. They're really entertaining to watch. Potter's Brighton team were very much more controlled. They weren't as flash. They weren't as high scoring. They were very much defense first, control the game using possession, using systems, using bodies, and, you know, ultimately create overloads in the attacking areas and make sure you've got your players in the right position to pick the ball up high up the pitch. So, you know, the signs are there that he's getting back to that. And you know, this Chelsea team is starting to replicate it, because defensively they're looking much more tight at the back. And if you've got a really solid defense, then you've got a great chance of winning a lot of football matches. So, I think it'll all come together eventually. I think they brought in some really good players that will help that. When Felix is back, you know, he made an unbelievable cameo against Fulham. Is it 60 minutes he played? He looked fantastic. So if you can get him back into the fold and alongside all the other players that they've brought in, you know, there's the signs that they could be a team that could be very dangerous in the second half of the season. Not that I'm saying they're going to crash the top 4 or anything, but, you know, they'll definitely be much more competitive than what we've seen.
Yeah, I just can't back that happening this weekend. I know Zuma's out for West Ham. Agard's played very well, the Moroccan center back.
Player.
He's been very impressive. And things look a little bit more stable under David Moyes, yet not spectacular. That's why I kind of went down the same path as you. I wrote down both teams to score no at -110, but I went a step further because I think it's going to be a combination of both teams to score no and under 2.5 goals. And it gives me a little bit more juice here at +117. You know, I like my plus numbers. So let's combine that. It brings in the potential for a 2-0 in this game as well. I think it could end 1-0, 2-0, one way or the other. So let's back that. Both teams to score no under 2.5 at +117.
Yeah, I just hope for your sake Chelsea don't find the scoring boots and win 3-0 or something like that.
It could happen. I mean that's the risk. I've said that in back-to-back weeks against Liverpool and Fulham. I backed Fulham Chelsea to go over 2.5 goals. Didn't even close. They could have played for 2 days, and I just didn't think that anyone was going to score in that game, which is surprising considering that Fulham has been a bang-on over team up until the last 2 weeks, where things have become a little bit more quiet as well. So we're both on the same page, let's put it that way, for West Ham Chelsea to start the weekend off. Let's keep things in London. Another matchup between two London-based sides. It's Arsenal and Brentford. Arsenal still atop the table on 50 points. Brentford, like, they're the team that no one's talking about. Well, very few people are talking about because everyone's cast their attention to Brighton. But Brentford have been full value as well, coming off another win last week. Arsenal, the 1-0 loss to Sean Dyche's Everton, their second loss of the season. They lost the XG. You mentioned it earlier in the podcast, 1.91 to 0.76 away at Goodison Park. And they've lost back-to-back games in all competitions. They won their last 4 away games, however, coming into this one, a combined 9-2, no clean sheets in their last 3 in all competitions heading into that game. So it was kind of off script for Arsenal to play the way they did. They're 8-1-0 at home this season, 25 goals for, just 10 conceded at the Emirates, and they have the 3rd best home expected goal differential on the season. Brentford are coming off that 3-0 victory over Southampton, 2.28 XG to just 0.75 according to Infogol. They haven't lost in their last 9 Premier League games. Their last loss in the Premier League, I keep on saying this, October 23rd at Aston Villa, 4 clean sheets in their last 5 Premier League games as well. It's wild what they're doing on the season. They've scored 35 goals, with an expected goals of 36. So that number kind of spot on. 28 goals conceded with 29.8 expected goals against. So they're kind of punching right what their weight and what the numbers suggest to us. They are 2-5-3 away from home on the season. This has kind of been their weakness because they've been so good at home. 12 goals scored and 18 conceded. But in terms of expected goal differential, just a -1. Their last 4 away games have been much better for Brentford. Draws against Leeds and Forest and wins over City and West Ham. First to score in 5 of 7 in the first half, winners 6 of 8, and they're almost completely healthy as well. Arsenal won the game between these two sides earlier this season. It was a 3-0 final, a 0.51 XG to 1.14. So Arsenal are still favorites ahead of this game and pretty considerable favorites as well. Is that based upon Brentford's poor away form and the fact that Arsenal has been as good as it gets in terms of their home form this season?
Yeah, they are, I think, the second best home team in the league behind Man City based on the underlying data. You know, they've been pretty flawless, barring that kind of really dull 0-0 against Newcastle. They've been exceptional. I hinted to it earlier though, the way in which Everton created chances and exposed Arsenal, it gave me a little bit of concern in this match, because I think Brentford, while they don't play the same system, they obviously don't have the same kind of players, but they play in the same kind of style in the sense that they're very hustle and bustle. The system or the tactics, the formation, very tight, very difficult to break down. They press. They'll probably press at a similar rate as to what Everton did, and they've got a strength from set pieces. And we saw Everton cause problems from set pieces. The goal obviously came from a set piece, so I think that could be a potential issue for Arsenal. I mean, for me, the bet in this one is both teams to score. I think it's plus 100, so pretty much an even money bet, and I really like it as a bet. I think Arsenal, they've not actually been as solid at the back at home as many people would think. They've conceded multiple goals 3 times against Leicester, Liverpool, and Man United. While I think it's Fulham, Villa, Spurs, and West Ham have all got on the score sheet as well. So both teams to score have actually landed in 78% of Arsenal home matches. Brentford travelling, they're actually the 6th best attacking team away from home. The record's not great, but they create chances when they travel, and they've actually scored in 70% of their away matches. So I think this has got all the makings of being quite an entertaining game. So yeah, both teams to score for me. It might be my best bet. Come back to me at the end of the pod for that, but I just thought that the number was just a little bit big, and potentially a little bit disrespectful towards Brentford, who are performing like a top 6 team. And generally when top 6 teams play other top 6 teams, then both teams to score is a lot shorter than this, because both have got the attacking talent to cause problems. So that's my play in this one.
I like this Brentford team. I really do. There's nothing flashy. I think Rico Henry at left back has been excellent. And I think that Arsenal, what they're starting to show is if Saka and Martinelli can't get on the ball and control the game from wide areas, they're a team that can be dealt with. Now, this is me. I've been looking for these opportunities to fade on Arsenal, and this is the proper context for me, because Brentford are a considerable underdog here. And even if Arsenal go on and win this game, I like the chances still coming away with a winning bet. Brentford went to Man City and showed absolutely no fear against the best, for me, and best statistically, the best home side in the Premier League this season, and came away with a win there. Brentford with the handicap plus 1.25. So if Arsenal go on and win this game, you still win a half bet at -102. And that number is going down, by the way. It's pushing towards an even number as well. That's too good to pass up for me. I think that Brentford are being undervalued. I have questions about what this Arsenal team and how good they actually are, and whether they're going to be able to see this through. They were a significant favorite in every game now, based upon their context. Are they that good? Were they punching over their weight in the first half of the season? For me, perhaps. They beat Brentford 3-0 this season. There's certainly not 3 goals that separates these two sides. So Brentford on the handicap, 1.25 at -102. That's my play, Jake.
Yeah, no arguments. I've got this down as 2-1, which would see you in for a half win, which you would absolutely take. Yeah, I agree. I think that there's I think I said it last week, didn't I, when they were playing a host to Southampton. There's still either the bookies aren't willing to trust Brentford or they're just disrespecting them altogether, because there's no way. I think they went off at was it around -109, something like that in that game. Yeah, you've got the same here. You've just got a Brentford team that are absolutely flying. They're playing and performing like a top six side on all the underlying metrics, but yet the handicap set at +1.25. I think you might be right. I think that by the time that kickoff comes, the handicap line might actually drop to +1. And you might, and then you obviously just if Brentford avoid defeat, you get a win. If they lose by 1, you just get your money back. So if you do like a pro Brentford stance, then definitely take it now with the extra kind of boost of, even if they lose by a goal, then you're still getting half a payout.
Do you subscribe to there's a look ahead game? I mean, it's very popular in North American sports, but they also play Man City midweek as well, Arsenal. And sometimes that can play into the psyche. You play into the approach of the manager, knowing that another big game is upcoming. Do you buy that? Is there any statistical analysis or number that's put to that? What do you make of it, Jake?
No, I don't buy into that. I think that these coaches now, well, particularly obviously from the same coaching tree, and Guardiola and Arteta, I think they're very much they won't let the players get ahead themselves, because they know that if they do, I think it'd be slightly different. I think if you got Arsenal playing Bournemouth and Man City playing Southampton, then you probably think, okay, we only have to be switched on 70% and we'll probably win the game. With Arsenal playing Brentford, a team that are high, they're flying high, they've probably got one eye on potentially crashing the top 6. You've got Man City taking on Villa, who are a very tricky opponent, managed by Unai Emery, who's got some unbelievable scalps over the years. Then I think they'll have them switched on and ready, and just say, look, you've got to earn the right to play in that Man City Arsenal match. You've got to, if one of them slips up, then all of a sudden the build up around that game won't be as much, and it won't mean as much. So you've almost got to sell that to the players. I don't think it factored into any pricing or modelling, that kind of thing. I know it is a term I've heard quite a lot, particularly in basketball, but maybe that's because they play pretty much every other night.
A lot of games. Yes.
Yes. So you've got a little bit more time to recover. If you do have a slip up, you've got more time to recover because there's more matches. So yeah, it is interesting. And I think that the schedule has worked out very nicely, because we've got 2 tough matches, I think, for both before they play each other. So yeah, they're going to have to definitely focus on these 2.
All right. Go on, Brentford. They've been an absolute peach at home in terms of rewarding bettors all season long, a team that's been overlooked. It's time to continue some very good away form. Let's go to another good rivalry game this weekend. 12th place Crystal Palace against 6th place Brighton. Jake did a feature on whether there should be some worry about Crystal Palace's current standing on Sporting Life this week. Kudos to you for that. They lost 2-1 at United after back-to-back draws against good sides, United and Newcastle. Before that, it was a 2.18 to 1.55 XG in that game. They lost that battle. Some of that was affected by Casemiro sending off in the 70-something minutes. Sorry, I don't have the specific, but then which kind of tilted things. Schlupp then scored a goal, made things interesting late as United were able to hold on to win that game. Wilf Zaha did not play. Palace hasn't won in the Premier League in 5 and no win in their last 6 in all competitions. They're the 3rd worst expected goal differential overall. 19 goals scored, 29 against. It's just a nightmare. And the XG expected goal differential is even worse, 23 to 35.5 expected goals against. They have been okay at home, 4-3-4, 11 goals scored, 16 against is less than flattering, but they have come away with those 2 aforementioned draws in their last 2 home games. Zaha and Ward are out, and Anderson is unlikely at center back for this matchup. Brighton, another win, a 1-0 victory over Bournemouth, 2.06 XG to 0.93 in that game. It's their first game in 8 in all competitions. They didn't score at least twice. Boring. Still 22 goals overall in their last 8 games and no losses in their last 6 as they stay absolutely on flames. It was also their first under 2.5 goals in their last 10 Premier League games, and they've been first to score in 5 of 6. They're 5-2-3 away from home, and they've scored the most goals away from home per game away from home in the season. 21 away goals in 10 games. Notably, McAllister suspended this game due to accumulation. Colwell is a big injury at the back. Didn't cost them last week against Bournemouth, but he is a notable miss. And Ferguson and Lallana are close to returning. It's their first meeting of the season. Palace, no losses in 6 against Brighton. And Palace, no clean sheet also in their last 4 against Brighton. Brighton, however, no clean sheet in 10 against Crystal Palace. But these two sides somehow have still gone under the 2.5 goal total in 5 of their last 6. But both teams to score is cashed in 9 of their last 10 meetings. So a lot of 1-1s are being played between these two teams. Notable absences for both sides. Two teams on contrasting form. Yet the home side, the team that's struggling, it could be an enticing play in this game. I know you did your feature on that. You shake your head already. Explain to us why Palace is a team to absolutely stay away from, and maybe a chance to ride Brighton again heading into this rivalry game.
Yeah, I mean, I'll go on. I'll talk about Palace in a second, but I think this Brighton price is a bit short for me. I'm a huge fan of Brighton, have been for a while in terms of the way which they play and the price, but and the kind of process. But when I did my notes, they were plus 107. That's actually shortened to plus 104 at the time of recording. I think that's a touch too short for me. Palace are bad. Palace are playing really bad football, but this is a rivalry game, and I think McAllister is one of the players that you would have to put in the ballpark as a key miss for Brighton. I don't know if I could quite trust them just yet at this kind of price. Man United went to Crystal Palace a couple of weeks ago, and they went off just a bit shorter than this. Our Brighton are at that kind of level, is what I would say. As for Palace and to why to stay away, they've basically performed like a relegation team all season long. Last season, if anyone listened to the pre-season podcast will have heard me, talk very, very highly of what Vieira did at Palace. He got them performing as the 6th best team in the league last season based on expected metrics. This season, everything's just dropped off a cliff, which is really surprising. And it's kind of reverted back to the levels we saw under Roy Hodgson, which were, again, relegation worthy. So they ranked 18th in terms of expected goals for per game, 18th on expected goal difference per game, and 18th based on expected points per game. So, generally they have been the 3rd worst team in the league, and things haven't really picked up for them, even since the restart, when, you've had a nice time to kind of reset, get back to basics, whatever. They've actually dropped since the restart. It was 7 matches for them. They're not the 2nd worst team based on expected points per game. Only Bournemouth have collected fewer. 2nd worst in attack, 0.96 expected goals for per game, and overall expected goal difference, the 2nd worst as well. So reasons to kind of avoid Palace and maybe just keep one eye on them in the relegation market, because if things continue, if the performances continue in the same kind of manner, then they will eventually get into the position of being in serious trouble. But yeah, for me, Brighton, I think they'll win the game, but I don't think there's value in backing them to win the game, which is ultimately what we've got to look at. So I've got no bet in this. I've left this one alone from a betting standpoint. Brighton are more than capable of scoring a couple of goals against Crystal Palace. Defensively, they've looked really, really poor since the restart. But themselves at the back, they kept a clean sheet against Bournemouth, but generally they concede goals, concede chances. Yeah. So I'm happy to just give it a watching brief. Like I said, I think Brighton will win the game. I'd probably want around plus 115, maybe plus 120 for Brighton to be a bet.
No bet for me as well. I'm very conflicted. I feel like I have the angel and the devil on my shoulder. And I've made arguments to go both ways in terms of my play here. If you listen to this podcast on a regular basis, I love Brighton. I love the over. when they play, both on a plus number, over 2.5 goals at plus 107. It's screaming out, Wheeler, bet me. Brighton plus 104, Wheeler, bet me. But Palace plays them very competitively. Palace have drawn their last 2 at home. The first number I actually wrote down was Palace with the handicap of plus half a goal at minus 112. So I could convince my side either side of this game. It wouldn't surprise me if it ended in a draw, but I'm just going to make the mature decision and not go with anything here. You're right. I feel like all the numbers are a little bit short. And I kind of feel, based upon some of the absences, that anything could happen. So a no bet for me in this game, and I'll stay away. So it's a rare time we both agree on a no bet play. So
yeah, sometimes the best bet is just to have no bet. And you know, if you are conflicted, if you're not 100% sure, then don't put your money on it. If you're one of those, save it for a play later down the line that you are sure of.
I will be watching. I will be watching the result and how it plays out. I think it's a fascinating game. But yeah, there's no number that I can back heading into this one.
And the other really interesting thing about the matchup is that no matter whether it was Vieira or Hodgson, when these two teams play, Brighton always win the XG battle and never actually win the game. So I wonder if it's gonna change. So last season, I think at Selhurst it was 0.51 XG to Crystal Palace to 1.01 Brighton, and then at the Amex it was 2.66 Brighton to 0.5 Palace, and they both ended 1-1. And if you go back even further, Palace won at the Amex time before that. Brighton won the XG battle 3 to 0.3. And then, the same season, it was 1-1 and it was 1.83 to Brighton and 0.8 to Palace. So Palace have just got a knack. In fact, that was the game where Palace's only shot came from the penalty spot.
Right.
That 0.8 XG total was just one shot, which was a penalty. So Brighton generally, what I'm saying is, dominate Crystal Palace, but they can never, for some reason, actually win. So it'd be really interesting to see, given the way in which they're overperforming their expected goals under Roberto De Zerbi. I think they've scored 11 or 12 since the restart, maybe more, but the XG total is actually like 7 or 8. So they're overperforming, which is something that we don't usually see from Brighton, and we haven't seen from Graham Potter's Brighton. So it'd be interesting to see if that overperformance is something that can carry them over this hump and they actually beat Palace for once.
So those are the 3 feature matches from Saturday. Let's move on to Sunday. How often does this happen? I feel like we're living in these weird Premier League times because of the postponements, that you have odd fixture setups like we have heading into this weekend. How often do we see 2 teams play one another home and away back to back in a matter of 4 or 5 days, Jake? It simply doesn't happen, but we're going to get that between another 2 rivals, 2 sides, 2 clubs that simply don't like one another. It's 16th place Leeds on 19 points facing 3rd place Manchester United on 43 points. Can you remember this happening like this in recent times?
No, not like this. We've had Chelsea, Fulham that have played each other in the space of 2 weeks recently. Spurs City as well, but we've not had the same, like two of the same matchups in the same week before.
United Palace as well, but yeah, this, the fact that the War of the Roses back to back, like Sunday's
crazy.
Eric Ten Hag coming out of the game on Wednesday says, "I wish we were playing the game right away," based on the way that the last game played out, and you understand why, because the game on Wednesday played to a 2-2 final where Leeds United and their 3 managers. It was so weird to watch it play out. I guess 3 minds are better than the one of Jesse Marsh, because they ended up coming away with a 2-2 draw against United, although United won the XG in that game at Old Trafford 2.08 to 0.85. Just couldn't put the ball over the line. I thought United were the better side. Started the first half conceding a goal within the first minute. Slow start to the second half. Don't think that goal should have stood, by the way. The ball was clearly handled in the midfield in the build-up to the goal, but nothing called. Nonetheless, a 2-2 draw in that game. It's the 4th draw in the last 6 Premier League games for Leeds. They did lose to Forest last weekend 1-0, which inevitably cost Jesse Marsh his job. Leeds have played in games that have gone over the 2.5 goal total in 6 of their last 8, and both teams to score have come through in 6 of their last 8 in all competitions as well. No wins in their last 8 games. Their last win came at home, 4-3 over Bournemouth back on November 5th. They are 3-4-3 at home on the season, 15 goals scored and 14 against. For Manchester United, Marcus Rashford, now 20 goals in all competitions, scored again against Leeds. He scored in 3 straight Premier League games in a row. Like we mentioned, they beat Crystal Palace last weekend, but it cost them Casemiro through suspension. And Anthony, they really missed the player on the right-hand side because Rashford played the first half down that right-hand side. He was injured. He's questionable for this weekend as well. Back-to-back games, however, their XG was over 2. It was a full debut for Sabitzer in that game, and Dalot returned to the starting 11. United have played in games that have gone over the 2.5 goal total in 9 of 11 in all competitions. Both teams to score in 6 of 8, and they've been the first to score in 7 of 8. 5, 2, and 4 away from home, just 15 goals scored and 20 conceded, but their XG is even. Martial and McTominay both remain out over the short term. Head-to-head, United haven't lost to Leeds in their last 7. United did win this fixture last season 4-2, and they've scored 17 goals against Leeds in their 5 games since Leeds were promoted back to the Premier League. So with no surprise, these two sides have played to over the 2.5 goal total in 6 of their last 7 meetings. Does the fact that this wonky fixture list make this game a stay away, or is there something to do with this that makes you think there is some decent value and there are plays to be made in this game?
Yeah, I wasn't actually going to have a bet in this, and then I just thought, I looked at the price and just thought, Leeds for me are a relegation contender. Man United are a top 4 team. Should Man United be minus 105 or should they be shorter? And for my money, they should be shorter. They should be closer to maybe minus 115. So I'm happy to take United to win. That's just pure price play. And then you factor in the midweek game in which United were by far the better team. Leeds turned it on for 2 minutes in the first half and 2 minutes in the second half when they scored the goal. And other than that, it was a really entertaining game. Leeds played wide open and made it fun. But other than that, they didn't really threaten much in terms of creating chances. So for me, there's a big gulf in quality. And I think Manchester United, I think having, will Leeds have a new manager by this game? I don't think so. Like even if they have a new manager appointed, he'll be in the stand. I don't think he'll be working with the players at that point because it's too tight a turnaround. So it means that Ten Hag and his team have got a little bit of a feel as to what the caretaker interim managers want to do with the team, which I think will only help them second go around. And yeah, United are a team that are starting to create chances at a better rate now, which was my main concern with them pre-World Cup. I was saying that defensively they look pretty sound. They just weren't creating enough. And pre-World Cup, they were averaging 1.5 expected goals for per game. Since the restart, that's actually gone up to 1.85. So we've seen a decent uptick in terms of the creation and creativity within the team. Leeds have still got massive defensive concerns for me. They obviously had a couple of players go off injured as well in that midweek game. So yeah, all of that added together, I'm quite happy to go with United to win. The line's actually just moved to minus 107, so it's actually getting closer to what I expected. Yeah.
When I first looked this morning, and we're recording this podcast on Thursday, it was at minus 104. So it's continued to shift in that direction, which I'm not surprised.
No, that's kind of what I was expecting. Like I said, I probably would have it between minus 115, minus 120. I wouldn't be surprised to see it get to that point before the weekend, before the game. Ask yourself this: if Man United won in midweek, would you still be getting this price? Or is there some result bias that's gone into this price? The fact that Leeds actually went to Old Trafford, held them to a 2-2 draw. So, okay, we'll just make sure Man United aren't that short. We don't think we can trust them. So, if you look at it like that, and then you look at the actual game and the data and the stats, and you see that United should have won the match, then the price looks even better. So, yeah, I'm happy to go with United to win this one. Minus 107. Like I said, I'd back it down to minus 115, I reckon.
I'm looking at this game in a very similar way. I might actually have 3 bets for this game,
Just three.
which might be a first. I just look. I'm on United as well. Leeds aren't very good. They're just not. They're unreliable at the back. They give up so many cheap chances. I think if Rashford plays the full minutes on the left-hand side against Luke Ayling, then it's lights out. It's game over. Or he can play through the middle as well and expose them a little bit more at the back. I think that even with a makeshift midfield, that United can do the job. And I think that you're right. The price, even at minus 107, I'd probably take him up to minus 115 to go on and win this game. And Eric Ten Hag will have this team focused. Like, I just really rate him as a manager versus the 3-headed monster of whatever going on with Leeds right now. So I like that. I like United to score more than 1.5 goals. So the team total section, United over 1.5 at minus 120. There's goals in this game. It showed that over the years, and based upon the rationale that you provided with them, creating more chances as well. It's looking much better in terms of process for Manchester United. And the final one, watching the game, Leeds United, their midfields are a bunch of butchers. Like Adams and McKennie, there are fouls waiting to happen. And I think that when two teams like this, it's going to be a charged atmosphere at Ellen Road as well. United might be a step slow when you're a little bit fatigued and the legs go. There are more of those sloppy fouls with that charged environment. What about over 4.5 bookings at plus 106? Like, I typically stay away from bookings markets here, but this one could be a firecracker. The game was played in such a sloppy manner on Wednesday. Like, both teams, just their inability to hold on to the ball, players flying into challenges. Then you build in a little bit more hostility between these two sides that don't like one another, familiar with one another, might be a little bit more cagey just in terms of the way the game's played, more fouls. So I don't mind that at a plus number as well. So I'll go over 4.5 bookings. 3 full plays in this game. This is going to be a first for me on this podcast.
Paul Tierney's the referee for the game. Was he 3.35 cards per game is what he's averaged, but I'm pretty sure at the start of the season he was a bit mental and he's curbed it a little bit. So I don't see that as a bad appointment for what could be a card heavy game. I think there's 4 in midweek, weren't there?
There were 4
in terms of So I've got it up now. The record for Tierney. He's not been too unreliable with cards. The start of the season 5, 6, 4, 6, 4, 6, 5. So he's got an over 4.5 in him for sure. And yeah, like you said, I mean, it's quite funny watching Adams and McKennie. Like, they just look like walking yellow cards, don't they? Whenever they step on the pitch.
It's brilliant to watch. I actually really rate both players. I do, but they're physical, they're combative. They're perfectly suited for an old school version of the Premier League. And the way that Leeds continue to play, this high flying, high pressure, and they're going to play that way at home in a game against the rival. To me, both those players, there could be a sending off in this game as well. It wouldn't surprise me either. So it seems to make sense for me. And as long as Fred is continuing to play in that midfield and featuring prominently, there's giveaways. It puts players on skates. Like Martinez could have had booking. Like, there were so many players that could have been booked in that game that just weren't. So yeah, we'll go with a big 3-pack in this game and we'll hope for the best.
Yeah, I don't mind it at all as a bet. I think there's the way in which, like I said, both teams play, they're so direct and they're so quick in terms of the transition that it just leads itself to, even if we saw a couple of cynical ones, didn't we? Was it Junior Firpo in midweek who literally just wrestled Rashford to the ground? Like, yeah, it was like on his back.
Got a piggyback,
yeah. I'll just ask you, if Anthony's not fit, would you play Palestri from the start? Because I've liked what I've seen from him at the World Cup as well. I thought he looked pretty sharp for Uruguay. He came off the bench and he looked really sharp. He was involved in the equaliser, winning the ball back.
What I might actually do is I'd probably shift Bruno out to the right hand side, and I'd play Jadon Sancho underneath. because I feel like Sancho is more of a tactician than a player that's naturally suited to play a wide left position or an outside left position. And when he did come on in the previous game, upon his return from Manchester United, he actually played as a number 10 underneath the striker. So I'd be intrigued. I'm intrigued to see how he would fare in that role. So Sancho underneath, Bruno to the right, and Rashford wide left. And if you don't want Rashford wide left, you could play Garnacho there and put Rashford up top instead of Weghorst. That's kind of how I think that United might be their best setup, at least over the short term, until Casemiro returns or McTominay is back available for the team. So,
yeah. But I just thought that given the game will probably get so stretched, I want someone who's got pace to run at Firpo because he's a walking yellow card as well.
Yes.
And I think if you've got a really strong ball carrier that can take him on, maybe switch Garnacho over to that side and give him, try and terrorize him that way. But,
or Elanga can come back in. I mean, there's no great option, but there are some different options for Eric Ten Hag to consider. Monday Night Football returns, and it's the Merseyside Derby. It should be a good one based upon what's at stake here for two sides that are looking to get some kind of consistency, and for Everton at the very least, build on some progress. It's 10th place Liverpool facing 18th place Everton. Liverpool embarrassed 3-0 loss away at Wolves. Wolves had a 2.89 XG in that game as well. Liverpool continued to be a nightmare defensively. It's just wild. In 2023, this is how Liverpool have fared. A 3-0 loss to Brentford, a 2-2 draw to Wolves in the FA Cup, a 3-0 loss to Brighton, a 1-0 win over Wolves in the FA Cup, a goalless draw with Chelsea, a 2-1 loss to Brighton in the FA Cup, and now a 3-0 loss to Wolves. This is Liverpool we're talking about. That's 1 point in their last 4 Premier League games, and they've lost the XG battle in every single one of them. They've gone over the total of 2.5 in 8 of 10. They've conceded in 9 of their last 10 Premier League games. They're now 15th in expected goals against, according to Infogol. 15th in that category. It's just wild to see what's happened. However, Liverpool are still very good at home. 6-3-1 on the Premier League season, 23 goals for, and just 9 conceded. Jota is back in training, but no reinforcements are coming for Jurgen Klopp this weekend. Everton, let the Sean Dyche era reign strong over Goodison Park, 1-0 win over Arsenal, and a 1.91 XG in that game. A flat midfield 3 worked for them. It was very Dychean, according to our very own Jake Osgathorpe. He only made 1 sub in that game. That's because Calvert-Lewin came off. He's a little bit of a doubt with a knock heading into this weekend. It was their first win in 9 and their first clean sheet in 8 games overall. They still have only scored 16 goals in 21 games, but their XG for Everton is much better at 25.2. Both teams to scorers played in 6 of 8. Away from home, the second worst expected goal differential in the Premier League, just 1 win in 10 away games. Head-to-head, it was a goalless draw back in September, a 1.53 XG to 2.25. Somehow it stayed goalless. Liverpool haven't lost to Everton in their last 3, but before that, Everton didn't lose in the previous 3 to Liverpool, and there have been 3 draws in the last 6 meetings between these two sides. So at home, Liverpool playing at home, still a considerable favorite. I don't know about you, Jake. I cannot back Liverpool as a favorite no matter who they're playing based upon their current form. So what is the market? What do the numbers tell you heading into the Merseyside Derby?
Yeah, I've got the same feeling as last week when we looked at the Liverpool price against Wolves, and it just looks too short. Like this is the team that are performing like a mid-table to bottom half side, and they're being priced as a top 4 contender, and ultimately they're not at that level. Like the players might be good, they've obviously had an unbelievable season last season, nearly won the quadruple, but this time around, like the bookies need to shake themselves and adjust because Liverpool are just the rest. They're not part of that kind of elite that are going to kick on and qualify for Europe, or not unless something drastic changes anyway. You mentioned it there. The results were shocking. The last 4 league games, we've lost the XG battle in all of them. Against Chelsea at home last time out, they were really poor. They didn't look like scoring. got beaten on the XG there, conceded good chances. And the results at home have been steady. 1-6, drawn 3, lost 1, as you've said, but they've not really been explosive. Partly, in fact, because they've had only the 11th best defensive process when playing at home. So they ship around 1.44 expected goals against per game. The bet I like in this is Everton with a handicap. The handicap line's set at +1. We're getting +103 for that handicap line. And the +1 basically means if Everton avoid defeat, we get a payout. If they lose by exactly 1 goal, we get our money back. And the reason that appeals is because Liverpool, in 10 home league matches, this bet has actually won in 4 of them, and it's pushed in 4. So it's only lost in 2. So it's been a profit maker. And can you guess the 2 teams it gets lost to?
Leeds.
I'll give you a clue. They're right at the bottom of the table.
Leeds and Southampton.
Yeah, Southampton and Bournemouth is the only 2 teams that Liverpool have actually covered the handicap with.
Covered. Yes.
Sorry. Beat Bournemouth 9-0 and beat Southampton 3-1. Every other game that they've won has been by a 1-goal margin.
Wow.
And they've obviously failed to win 4 times as well. So this bet's got decent recent pedigree. And Everton. Like I honestly think that, like I said it last week, I think that the squad that Dyche has got there, he'll be licking his lips at that, because I think they've got a lot of the tools that he likes for playing his style of football. If anything, they're actually better than any version of his Burnley team that he ever had at Turf Moor in terms of individual quality and players. I mean, you look at that midfield 3 of Onana, Gay, and Doucouré, like they can do a bit of everything.
Yeah, legs for days in there. Yeah,
absolutely. They're powerful. They're really physical as well, which I like. They get box to box. Like Doucouré was pushing high, and Nana was pushing high. Then you've got your tight wingers. You've got McNeil and Iwobi, who can be, a little bit more. They're workhorses, aren't they? They get up and down. They can sit tight and protect as well. And you've got Calvert-Lewin, who's a big bulldozer up front, who hold the ball up. He can bully defenders. So there's a lot of tools that he'll really like the look of. And it's probably one of the main reasons why he actually took the job, was because he saw the squad and thought, I can, save them and then kick on. We know that he's going to set them up to be difficult to beat here. They'll probably look to set pieces to nick goals. They've obviously got some big lads in that team. So yeah, I think that it's only 1 game, obviously, but it was a game against the league leaders that had been beaten once all season long, and they held them to their worst attacking performance of the season. So it's probably, rather than an asterisk next to it, it probably deserves a little bit more credit than what it's been given, that performance. And like I say, it's 1 game, but in my mind, before that game anyway, Dyche was going to sort Everton out and get them to safety, because ultimately he's a better manager than Lampard. And yeah, I think he'll make them legit. And the bottom line here is I don't think they'll get blown out. Even if they lose, I think it'll be a tight loss, a 1-0, a 2-1. But I wouldn't be at all surprised to see them go and get a result at Anfield the way Liverpool have played.
I am subscribing to the Dychean theory as well. Everton +1 at +103. The consensus play of the week between us two. Doucouré coming back into the team. Big call. I think it's the right call. Relying on the Burnley boys, bringing McNeil into the 11 as well. Tarkowski scored the goal. The key matchup is going to be Mikalenko versus Salah, but other sides have been able to manage Mo Salah. He's like, other than him, where's the threat coming from right now? Everton has more legs in the midfield. I think they're going to be combative in this game as well. Give me Everton +1 at +103. So
look at us agreeing again on taking Liverpool on. Yeah.
So Monday Night Football should be a good one. Let's pivot to rapid fire. 8th place Fulham and 13th place Nottingham Forest. Do you have a play in this game?
I do, yeah. I'm going to take the unders, -116. I know it's very anti what we usually do when it comes to Fulham, but 4 of the last 5 have gone under 2.5 from a Fulham perspective. The goals have dried up. They've created little, 1.1 expected goals for per game in the last 6 matches. And Forest have actually been the 7th best defensive team since the restart, 1.3 expected goals against per game, but have struggled at the other end themselves. So tight game expected. All of Forest's last 5 have gone under 2.5. So yeah, I thought that price was appealing, and it's the kind of game that you'd expect Forest to turn up and try and get a point.
I'm backing Fulham here. What did you say right before we hit record? You're backing Fulham against Forest, aren't you? You know my feelings about Nottingham Forest. They're a shambles. They're punching above their weight. I can't believe they're continuing to pick up points. Really, this Fulham side have played a very difficult schedule over recent weeks. They played a lot of very good teams that you consider top of the table sides. They've dropped some points, but they're a good team at home, 5-3-3 at home. I like Keylor Navas. That's the only reason why I'm staying away from the over in this game. Fulham already beat Nottingham Forest 3-2 this season. Give me Fulham to win at -108. Leicester City, 14th place, coming off a win 4-2 over Aston Villa. Taking on 5th place Spurs, coming off a 1-0 win over Man City. But it did cost them their goalkeeper, Hugo Lloris. Do you have a play in this one from the King Power this weekend?
No, I don't. I think this is quite a difficult one to kind of gauge. I'm not ready to say Leicester have turned a corner. The goals that they scored against Aston Villa were from individual errors. You're not going to get those every single week. Spurs were good versus Man City, but again, was that more of Man City being bad as opposed to Spurs being really good? If I was to have a kind of a lean, it would be looking at Spurs to win to 0 at +326.
To 0?
Yeah,
wow.
Because I'll tell you why. Leicester have been the worst attacking team at home in the entire league this season.
Yeah, they have been.
They've averaged just 0.89 expected goals for per home game, which actually makes them the only side in the entire league to generate less than an expected goal per game. So the way in which Spurs have played, kind of keeping a little bit more controlled since they got blown out by City in that second half. I think there's a chance. In fact, you know what? I'll turn this into a small play. A very small play of Tottenham to win to 0 because I've just seen the price and I wasn't expecting it to be that big. So +326.
Wow. Okay, here we go. Because I love the over. Remember those Austin Powers films? There was Goldmember. Well, this one is about Goalsmember. I love goals. And that's what we're going to see in this game. Maddison back in the team. Tete comes over from Shakhtar Donetsk. He looked very good for Leicester City. And Didi's coming back in the team. Evan Samari both have a chance for Leicester City. Look, I think that this team has goals in them each and every week, and they concede them just as regularly because I think they have the worst starting goalkeeper in all the Premier League. I do in Danny Ward, and they can concede. And Spurs have quietly scored 41 goals on this season. That's the third most in the Premier League. I think that they can score as well. Do Danjuma and Poros play this weekend? Perhaps for Manchester City. These two, remember, played to a 6-2 final back in December. 8 goals were scored between these two teams. And they've gone over the 2.5 goal totals in head-to-head in 7 of their last 8. So I'm going to go over 2.75. So if 3 goals are scored in this game, it's a half win at -103. Bring on the goals. Might be the highest scoring game of the week, in my opinion. So
I've got it as a 2-0 Spurs.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good luck with that. I love it. Just digging in. This might be a head-to-head. I don't think we're going to make this an official head-to-head, but it'll be a half head-to-head. How about that? 20th place Southampton taking on 15th place Wolves. Do you have a play here?
Yeah, it's a bit of a no-brainer, isn't it? Wolves with a handicap +0, -119. Yeah, that'll do for me. Southampton all over the place, off the pitch, on the pitch. Jones obviously is in a little bit of hot water. The fans are turning against him. He seems to think he's the second coming. And yeah, they're really struggling to create chances. Just 0.8 expected goals for per game they've created over the last 5 matches. And Wolves have been really impressive under Lopetegui. They played, 7 times? 1-3 drawn, 1 lost, 2, but both defeats have come against the Manchester teams, which, 2 of the best 4 teams in the league. Yeah, they're the better team, basically. And we can get a nice number with a +0 handicap, which means if the game's drawn, we get our money back.
No bet for me, but if I was to make a play, I have a lean to Southampton. Really? Remember
You did this a couple of weeks ago with Nottingham Forest.
But I'm not making a bet here. This is my rationale why I'm not making a play, because I don't really rate Southampton, but their Premier League play has been affected by not only playing the FA Cup, but playing back-to-back Carabao Cup games against Newcastle over that stretch. So they haven't performed the way I think that they're capable of in the Premier League over the last few weeks. Walker Peters is likely to return. He's such an important piece to this team. And Wolves, they lost Hee-Chan Hwang. He's got a hamstring. He's been an important player of this stretch. And Wolves are dog's breakfast away from home. They've only won once away from home in the season. And I'm sorry, scoring 3 goals at home against the poorest Liverpool side aren't going to get me on this side, on their side in terms of an away game, a crucial home match for Southampton here. So no play for me, but I do have a little bit of a lean to Southampton in this one.
Yeah, you say Wolves have won 3 times away from home. They played 3 away games under Lopetegui. Yeah, all right, once. They played 3 away games under Lopetegui. They've won at Everton, they've drawn at Villa, and then they lost at Man City, which you kind of expect. Like, that's a decent away record under Lopetegui, which we both agree is a good coach. I think he's more than capable of, doing a real job on Southampton. I don't know about you. I think Wolves are probably, the way in which they're kind of progressing at the moment, they're probably the 12th, 11th best team in the league. Like maybe even top half if they carry on, because I do rate the signings that highly. I think they've got a really good squad of players there.
Well, I don't think Southampton are the worst team in the league. They have 14 goals. It's been a problem. They bring in 2 players that could potentially help them, but they have a 23 XG. They're just, it should be able to turn around at some point here for Southampton in order for them to pick up some points. And this is a game where they have to. I'm not buying Nathan Jones saying they, if players actually care about they versus us, come on, give me a break. For me, this is just more of a media story than anything else. But yeah, no play. I'm just saying I'm leaning Southampton. I don't rate Wolves either. So.
Which way are you leaning? Because I'll push you the other way.
Yeah. It's going to have to be like a gale force breeze to push me in any other direction, but I'm staying away from this one. Let's see how it plays out. 19th place Bournemouth facing 4th place Newcastle. Do you have a play in this game?
I do, yeah. I'm going to take Newcastle to win to 0 at plus 151. I thought it was a big number. I think I fully expect Newcastle to win because Bournemouth are just rubbish. Since the restart, they struggling to create chances, less than 0.9 expected goals for per game, allowing 1.8. So basically allowing twice as many chances as what they concede, as what they're creating themselves. They failed to score in 5 of the last 6. They've lost 5 of the last 6. All of the losses have come, with an opponent clean sheet as well. Newcastle, they struggled a little bit to create against West Ham. I think they've only scored 5 in 6 themselves, but they've averaged 1.88 expected goals for per game over that span. So they are creating chances. They're just not putting them away. And the other side, the defense has been pretty incredible. Just 0.8 expected goals against per game in that time. So it's hard to see Bournemouth actually scoring. And given the way Bournemouth have actually defended, Newcastle should get chances.
It's the Eddie Howe spike game. Again, they played to a 1-1 at St. James's Park earlier this season. Some players are coming back into this Bournemouth side this weekend. Bruno Guimaraes is still out. He's a creative spark in this Newcastle team. No bet for me. Got nothing in this game either. I think that Bournemouth can come away with a hard-fought point here. Wouldn't surprise me. Newcastle, just draw. The goals have started to dry up. It might be midnight for Newcastle, Cinderella. Might be pumpkin time for Newcastle. We'll see how that plays out. So not going to touch this game. I'll leave that up to you. And finally, 2nd place City on 45 points take on 11th place Aston Villa on 28 points. Both teams coming off disappointing losses last weekend. So who steps up and shows what they're really all about this weekend?
I expect Man City to, but I've got no bet in this. City the best home side in the league based on the underlying numbers. Villa making their own downfall last week, but the results under Emery have been excellent, haven't they? Won 5, drawn 1, lost 2. If I was to have a lean, it'd be towards the under on the goal line. It's 3.25 currently. The only way that bet loses is if there's 4 goals, and I can't see that happening. So yeah, I'm just happy to give this a little bit of a watching brief and see what happens.
Aston Villa on the handicap plus 1.75 at plus 101. Villa's played City very competitively, remember the final game of last season, the twists and turns there. They played to a 1-1 in September as well. Something not right with this Man City side. I know they're back home, but they don't have a natural left back anymore. I just don't. I can't get behind the City team when you're giving me almost 2 goals on the handicap. I wouldn't be surprised if they won by a goal, but Villa under Emery's competitive. There will be a response, and 3 straight away wins under Unai Emery for Aston Villa against Southampton, Spurs, and Brighton. So Aston Villa, you've given me a 1.75. I'll take that on the handicap at plus 101. So
yeah,
final bet of the weekend.
I don't blame you. I just think I was looking at that as well as a potential, just trying to get Villa on side. But whenever City have lost away from home, like they got beat by Man United, they come back and beat Tottenham 4-2, then beat Wolves. I just think this City team are a completely different animal at home compared to away from home. They seem to be very vulnerable. If this game was at Villa Park, I'd be absolutely on board with you, Villa with a handicap, because for whatever reason they look to be struggling when they're traveling quite a lot since the restart. But yeah, I don't know. I've not seen enough bad from City just yet for me to throw them under the bus when they're playing at home.
All right. Oh, by the way, look ahead game. City Arsenal this week. Might as well throw that out there. All right.
What's your best bet?
Well, that's what I was going to go to you first as I stall and I settle on one.
Are we gonna have the same one? Are we gonna go for Everton?
Perhaps. Do you want to just make this a joint affair? Everton plus a goal at plus 103 is the best bet. It's one of my contenders. I'll give you that. I'm tempted to do same thing. Brentford on the handicap away at the Emirates. It does come with a little bit of risk. I was considering the over Spurs Leicester City at minus 103 as well. But if you want to unite forces here and both stick with the Everton plus a goal at plus 103, I'm happy to do that.
Yeah, let's do that. For me, it's either between that one or the both teams to score at the Emirates. That's my second biggest fancy. So yeah, we'll go with that. I think it served us well last week. We teamed up for the Liverpool Wolves match and we tipped a winner. So yeah, let's take that one.
Okay, a team effort this week here on EPL Insights. Remember to check out our Premier League predictions articles on Pinnacle.com. Keep it locked across at Pinnacle on Twitter and Pinnacle Vodcast. So you can see these pearly whites right here on YouTube as well. We cannot wait for the Super Bowl. Check out our Bumper NFL Insights podcast that's upcoming this week as well. You can follow myself at Gareth Wheeler, at Jake Oz on Twitter. And as always, odds were correct at the time of recording, and please gamble responsibly. Looking forward to this weekend. It's huge. Super Bowl, Premier League, Waste Management Open. We got it covered for you right here on Pinnacle. Good stuff, Jake. We'll catch you next week.
Cheers. Yeah, have a good weekend.
And we'll chat with you as well. On behalf of Jake, I am Wheels. This has been EPL Insights, presented by Pinnacle and powered by data provided by Infogol.